Hey everyone, and welcome to our deep dive today. We are going to be looking at NTGapps. It's a platform that lets you build custom software without needing to be like a coding whiz.
Yeah, that's right. NTGapps is what's called a low-code platform. It basically gives you the tools to create pretty powerful applications, but visually using like building blocks and logic instead of just writing tons and tons of lines of code.
And the source material for this deep dive is a training session for NTGapps developers. So we'll be listening in as they figure out how to create a system for managing those employee leave requests, when people want to take time off.
It's a really great example because it kind of touches on a lot of the core features of NTGapps. And even if you've never, built any software before, you'll get a good sense of how it all works and what goes into designing this kind of stuff.
Okay, so let's jump in. The session starts with the instructor kind of setting the scene. He explains that a leave management system helps companies, keep track of vacation time, sick days, other types of leave, all that.
And he really emphasizes that the goal here is to move away from all those messy email chains and paper forms. Instead, employees can just submit these requests online, managers can approve them electronically, and everything is all nice and organized in one place.
That makes sense. So where do they actually begin building this system?
Well, with a form, of course. It's like the digital version of that paper slip you used to fill out to request time off. The instructor walks the developers through making this form step by step.
So what kind of information needs to be on this form?
All the essentials. So employee name, the start and end dates of their leave, the type of leave they are requesting, things like that. And this is where we run into one of NTGapps' really key features, UDAs. That stands for user-defined attributes.
UDAs. Okay. Those sound like really powerful building blocks.
They really are. They let you customize forms with very specific fields and data types to fit whatever you need. The instructor shows how to use UDAs for things like drop-down menus to choose a leave type or checkboxes for certain conditions, and even attachments if you need to include supporting documents.
So it's not just using like a rigid template. You can really make it your own based on how your company actually handles leave.
Exactly. Now, just like any other data entry, you have to make sure that the information is accurate. Right. So that's where data validation comes into play.
Data validation. Is that like making sure that someone doesn't, accidentally enter an end date that's before the start date?
You got it. That's the perfect example. The instructor shows how to set up these rules in NTGapps to prevent these kinds of errors. And he makes a mistake on purpose, which is pretty funny, just to show how the system catches inconsistencies.
Wait, he made a mistake on purpose? Why would he do that?
It was a good way to highlight two things. First, that even, experienced developers can slip up. And second, how important testing and collaborating is. One of the developers in the session actually spots the error and points it out.
That's a good lesson for anybody working on any project, really. I mean, having another set of eyes can save you from so many headaches down the road.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Now, let's go back to those UDAs for a second. Some are very straightforward, like text fields or numbers. But some, like dictionaries and value lists, those can get a little bit more complicated.
Okay, so let's break those down a little bit. What makes dictionaries and value lists so special?
Think of them as ways to manage those predefined options. For example, your company might have specific categories for leave, right? Like vacation, sick leave, personal day. Instead of having to type these out each time, you can use a dictionary or a value list to just show a nice, neat drop-down menu for people to pick from.
Got it. So it's all about keeping the data clean, making sure that everyone's speaking the same language, so to speak. And that reduces the chance of like typos or other variations messing things up later on, right?
You got it. It makes the form way easier to use and the data more reliable in the long run.
Makes sense. Now, I'm curious about how all this data connects together. Like, let's say we have the employee's information in one spot and their leave requests in another.
Yeah.
Does someone have to manually copy that information between them?
That's where form lists come in.
Form lists. That sounds intriguing and maybe a little complicated.
I mean, they are a bit more advanced, but they're super useful. Basically, a form list lets you pull data from one form into another. So instead of retyping someone's name, department, other details on the leave request, you can use a form list to pull that information from their existing profile.
Ah, so it's like a dynamic link, basically, between different parts of the system.
Exactly. And to make it even more seamless, NTGapps has this feature called mapping.
Mapping, like a treasure map.
Not quite. But it does help you navigate the data. Mapping lets you define how information from one form should automatically fill in certain fields in another form.
So, for example, if someone picks their name from a list of employees, their department and job title could just automatically appear on the leave request form.
Exactly. It's all about streamlining things, making the process smooth and efficient. And this is really just the beginning of what NTGapps can do.
Wow, this is already more than I expected. We've gone from a simple form to automatically filling in fields and connecting data across different parts of a whole system.
And the best part is, we're just getting started. There's so much more to explore in this training.
This is getting really interesting.
Yeah. So we've seen how NTGapps handles that data entry and validation stuff. Now let's see how it kind of adds that extra layer of, user friendliness.
Yeah, you're talking about those little touches that really make a big difference.
Right.
Like the features you see in software you use every day that just seem to know what you need before you even ask.
Exactly. So one simple but really effective thing the instructor shows is the ability to set those default values using rules. So imagine you're starting a leave request, and the request date it's already filled in with the current date.
Oh, I see. So it saves you the trouble of, manually entering it, especially if you're requesting leave for that same day.
Exactly. It just streamlines things, eliminates those little points of potential error.
Makes sense. Speaking of streamlining, what about supporting documents? Those things employees often need to provide.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a doctor's note for sick leave.
Yeah, the instructor actually covers that too. He shows how NTGapps lets you just attach files and comments right in the system.
Oh, so employees can upload whatever documents they need to write to their leave requests, and managers can leave feedback or ask questions all in one place.
Precisely. Keeps all the communication centralized and organized. No more digging through your inbox or chasing down paper trails.
That's a huge plus for everyone involved. Now, something that's been on my mind though is security. With all this data floating around, how does NTGapps make sure that only the right people can see, that sensitive information?
That is, it's a critical part of any system that deals with employee data, right? And NTGapps tackles this with user roles and permissions.
Okay, so you can define different groups like, HR managers, department heads, regular employees, and control exactly what each group can see and do within the system.
Exactly. You can customize it to match, however your company is structured, to make sure everything stays secure.
That makes me feel a lot better. You wouldn't want just anyone to be able to approve those vacation requests.
Definitely not. Now, remember that bulk import thing we talked about, being able to upload data from a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
So the instructor goes back to that and shows how it works specifically for the leave management system.
So instead of making each leave request one by one, you could just upload a spreadsheet with everyone's info.
That's the idea. It's a great way to save a ton of time, especially for companies with a lot of employees. But as the instructor points out, even a feature as powerful as bulk import, it has its own challenges.
Oh, really? Like what?
Well, when he's doing the demonstration, he runs into some errors because the data in the spreadsheet wasn't formatted consistently, which just shows how important data quality is.
So garbage in, garbage out. Right?
Pretty much. Even with the fancy tools, you still got to be careful.
Makes sense.
But the cool thing is that the instructor uses this mistake as a teaching moment.
Yeah.
He shows everyone how to troubleshoot those errors, figure out what went wrong, and fix the data.
It's a good lesson in problem solving and critical thinking.
Exactly. Skills that are useful no matter what you're doing.
For sure. Okay, so we've covered a lot. We've talked about creating forms, data validation, user management, and even automation. It feels like we keep peeling back layers and finding more and more to this platform.
It's a good way to put it. And, we're not done yet. There are a few more things about NTGapps that I find really interesting.
Okay, I'm all ears.
Yeah.
What else can this platform do?
Let's go back to conditional validation for a minute. Remember how we were talking about preventing those invalid dates on the leave request form? That was a pretty simple example.
Right.
But conditional validation can do way more than that.
Like what?
Well, you can actually use it to control which fields are visible, which ones are required, even how they behave, all based on certain conditions. So, for example, you can make a field show up only if a certain checkbox is selected, or make a field required based on what someone picks in another field.
So the form can basically change depending on what the user is doing.
Yeah, it's all about making it more intuitive, more user-friendly.
That's really cool. It's like the form is intelligent or something.
Right. Another interesting thing is how NTGapps connects employees to system users. They use a special kind of UDA called assignment info to do this.
Assignment info. I think I remember